was really good answering public questions that we all had about AI. It was
Welcome. Welcome to the Authors Hour. My name is Fred Darm. I represent the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. We're a volunteer organization that aims to encourage writers and writing at the institution and beyond by both supporting and also supplementing the official activities of the institution's Writers Center. Every week we have events such as this, every Thursday, the Authors Hour. On Sundays at 5 o'clock up on the second floor of this building, we sponsor an open mic for writers and also listeners 18 years old or older. On Tuesdays at 1:15 up in the poetry room, also on the second floor, we have what is called an informal critique, at which a published writer will facilitate a discussion of your work. We urge you, if possible, to bring in 10 copies. If you're not able to bring in copies, bring in one, and we do have a copying machine we can use. As I said, we have the Authors Hour. At halftime, I will talk about some of the special annual events we sponsor. But you're not here to listen to me, so let's get to the authors. It's not called Fred's Hour, okay? Our first writer is Carol Jennings. She grew up just north of here in East Aurora and now resides in Washington, D.C. She is a retired lawyer and for most of her legal career worked in the Federal Trade Commission Bureau of Consumer Protection. Thank you for protecting her. She is an unretired poet. Her poems have appeared in numerous journals, including Chautauqua, and she has published 2 collections, The Death Spirit at the Piano, despite what the Daily says. They say the spirits are in the piano, which sounds like The Shining or something. And The Sustained Pedal. Both books are available at the Chautauqua bookstore. And as well, I'll try to say this a few times, so if you don't forget, books will be available for sale and signing up here right after the reading. Carol Jennings.
Thank you all for coming. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. I'm going to start with the first poem in the Sustained Pedal called A Flickering Light. And it sort of deals with my relationship to light, how I'm energized and uplifted by long days and the opposite by the short days. And it took me a while to figure that out. A flickering light. Why so much time before I grasped its place in my life? Before I understood the possibility to bend and stretch, fold it into poems, stories, save it for dark seasons, follow it north or south, depending upon month and hemisphere, or simply keep it in some mind pocket until needed to reflect the dark. As a child enthralled to midsummer light, enough to bicycle home at 9 o'clock with no thought about the flood of it to come, as days shorten and insects grow frantic and shrill about sex and death. I thought I could use it all up, euphoria, reserve nothing for later. Now I have mastered the art, or perhaps trick, of parsing it out in lesser portions to make it last. The way a flickering light can trick the eye to see it as a constant, and knowing this may be the antidote to everything. The next one is called Moulin, which you probably know is a hole in a glacier filled with glacial meltwater. It was inspired by a poem by famous Heaney called Postscript, in which he urged the reader to travel out to the west coast of Ireland and let the wind and the waves work their magic on you. And I'm inviting the readers to visit a glacier while we still can visit a glacier. Mulan. Take the time to walk back to the Pleistocene. Just off the highway between Jasper and Banff, park the car to board a snow bus that deposits you on the ice field, where you can guzzle glacial meltwater from a Mulan, water with a purity that preceded your species. Pay attention, or you could tumble into a crevasse from which you would not emerge until the ice has melted. Kneel down, touch the glacial tongue with reverence, but know that you violate it. Consider that it recedes and loses depth beneath your body, that it may disappear within the life of your child. Let the ice pierce a hole in you, even as it melts. From the glacier, I'm going to Hawaii, called Kansu Patella, written after a trip to Hawaii and learning about the mythology of Patella, the goddess of fire who lives in the volcano. Kansu is kind of an interesting form to work with, where the second and fourth lines of each stanza become the first and third lines of the next stanza. So each line has to be double duty, has to work harder. Kansu Patella. Palla's spirit lingers in the caldera, goddess of fire, killed by her sister. Remains of her body are hot magma, lava fountains she spews when angry. Goddess of fire, killed by her sister, Palla formed these islands from lava fountains she spews when angry. After plates move and mantle plume rises, Palla formed these islands from explosions of lava, black sand, seawater. After plates move and mantle plume rises, Hawaiians accept her volatility. Explosions of lava, black sand, seawater, wound into this chain of fertile islands. Hawaiians accept her volatility, eruptions the price of Palla's guilt, wound into this chain of fertile islands, tips of the world's longest mountain range, eruptions the price of Palla's gift, of cliffs, sand beaches, warm waves, tips of the world's longest mountain range. Cooling lava leaves behind an island of cliffs, sand beaches, warm waves, little paradise that begins to sink. Cooling lava leaves behind an island, and Palla will take back her land, little paradise that begins to sink, as she prepares to surface again. And Palla will take back her land. Her spirit lingers in the caldera as she prepares to surface again. Remains of her body still hot magma. I like to use poems to have conversations with people of the past that I admire. Usually it's pretty much a one-way conversation because they're no longer with us. I imagine this conversation with Beethoven in 2020, which was his 250th birthday, and all these Beethoven festivals were planned all over the world, and then COVID happened, and it was all canceled, so it's postponed. Conversation with Beethoven. He glowered, as he often did before. I wonder if this will be possible. He was deaf. I don't speak German. Does language still matter, I asked? He shakes his head. This was to be your year, 250th birthday celebration. He half smiled. Every orchestra programmed you, all the symphonies and concertos, Misa Solemnis, Fidelio, quartets. But a novel virus seized the living world. Everything had to be canceled. He shrugged, as though he knows, or perhaps doesn't care much. You pay attention to performances anymore. He shakes his head. I'm guessing you like the size of orchestras now. It's what you always wanted, isn't it? Again, he almost smiled. I am suddenly aware of music, unlike any I have heard before. What is that? Where is it coming from? It's not like anything you ever wrote. Finally, he smiled, motions me closer, speaks in a language I do not know, but understand. I am no longer bound by a system of tones that can be sketched on paper. I am truly free. That's how I like to think of him now, in an afterlife. Poem about Philip Roth, who I have always loved his novels, and I wrote this after he died. It's a prose poem in 3 stanzas. The first one is kind of a montage of the events he created and the characters he created. The second stanza is how those events related to my own life, although I used the second person, not the first. And the third stanza is kind of where we are today and the things that he can no longer write about. What Roth gave us. A patient on the analyst couch tries to overcome his Jewish mother, taking 3 ships of lovers, nicknamed the monkey, the pumpkin, the pilgrim. The ghost of Anne Frank inhabits 2 novels about an alter ego. History is altered when Lindbergh is elected president and favors Hitler. Daughter of a glove maker bombs the village post office to protest Vietnam. A professor who redefined his race is accused of racial slur. And a professor with a breast fixation wakes to find himself metamorphosed into one. A puppeteer performs carnal acts in graveyards while thinking of suicide. Roth's last word revisits the polio virus. Polio permeated your early years. You climbed down creek banks but did not jump in because the virus might lurk in the waters. You read history, especially stories of women who changed it. Anne was imprinted on your conscience because she was taken by Gestapo the same year you were born. Teachers forgot to mention that Lindbergh was an anti-Semite. You adopted politics opposite those of parents, aunts, uncles, but blowing up anything seldom occurred to you. Fiction made you wiser. First Salinger and Michener, later Dostoevsky and Roth. Text described in words shocked you, but only for a little while. You decided to be a shiksa to a Jewish lover. Now we are vaccinated against the old viruses, while new ones evolve. We swim freely in waters that will either dry up or overtake us. There is no more hiding under our desks to prepare for nuclear attack. We adjust to new danger in the face of Antarctica, Amazon rainforest, burning land. The universe is expanding. Extinction is a possibility, and Roth is gone. The plot against America spreads again, but he cannot write a solution. The human stain widens in concentric circles as he warns. Buried at Bard, he is out of reach of critics. His characters free to reinvent themselves, twist plots, change endings, what we all wish for. This is a poem from Mendelssohn and his Songs Without Words, which I have been playing, at least the easier ones, in recent years, and I love them. There's no thematic content, no titles, no descriptive content. He just wants you to imagine, whatever the music brings forth. So this is about playing Mendelssohn, about the images that it brings forth, spring, light. My mother, who also played Mendelssohn. Meditation, spring, Mendelssohn, Songs Without Words. It was never just about lengthening light, the sun shifting hemispheres, buds that presage blossoms, or my being born. There was always a darker side. And then death happened. Father at equinox, mother a few days before. Spring became about endings too. Whatever the season or infection circling the world, I returned to Mendelssohn's, later Ona Vorka, Songs Without Words for piano, and try to borrow from my conscious self any language or tone. These songs are not about anything. At 9, Mendelssohn set Psalm 19 to music. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament show us his handiwork. Later, he decided words were too limiting. Poems could be built solely with tone. In the Hebrides, he created a landscape without word or paint, calling it first the Lonely Island, Open fifth chords flowed like the ancient lava that formed hexagonal pillars of black basalt in single caves. He enters it with no skiff, just violas, cellos, and bassoons in the key of D minor. I encountered Scotland first through Mendelssohn and reflect on memory of the Castle Campbell ruins, lonely in a field of heather, as I work out voicing and fingering of his arpeggiated chords. At the piano, my mother would allow no spoken words in the room. I take it further and exclude the silent ones as well. The next one is about a young man named Elijah McLean, who you may recall was killed by police in Colorado several years ago. Totally senseless killing. His mistake was wearing a ski mask because he was always cold. He was a very interesting person, a massage therapist. He played the violin. He liked to play for animals in the animal shelter. And I used some of the words that he was reported saying before he died, before he was rendered unconscious. Elijah, who once played a violin for stray cats. He lived within a body, often cold, that struggled to breathe. He built his own boundaries, taught himself what he needed to know. His hands were a gift to skin and tissue in need of pressure without pain. He played the violin to calm stray cats taken from streets and placed in cages. He told the police, "I was just going home. I'm an introvert. I have no gun. I don't do any fighting. All I was trying to do was become better. I'm so sorry. I'm just different. I just can't breathe correctly." They pressed his carotid arteries, cut blood flow to his brain, injected him with drugs. After that, he said nothing. His violin is still, cold has taken over. The next one is one of my tributes to Chopin, whom I love, and we heard play brilliantly in the amphitheater Monday evening. The held note for Chopin. You, storyteller of the long note, count of the harmonic hours, flutterer of the sustained pedal, singer of two voices in the right hand, liberator of thumbs to play black keys, and fifth finger to find half timbre. Here, a piano player in veiled clarity, small hands with supple wrists, hands set in marble, a composer with a short life. Let me play your nocturne for my own dark. Let someone discover an unknown melody that was in your mind as you lay dying. Let me find the second voice each time I leave you. Let your held note be a candle on my way to sleep. Let us be lovers in a dream. This one is called Ice Jam, and it's about an event that happened in my hometown of East Aurora when I was in kindergarten. And I wasn't there, and I wasn't really aware of it at the time, but my good friend was there and told me the story. And she may be listening on Zoom, so Judy, it's for you. Ice Jam. On the walk to kindergarten with my red-haired friend, the best part was Maple Street Bridge, where we paused to lean over the stone railing and peer at the street. Dry by end of summer, inviting us to climb down the bank and cross stone by stone, or frightening with its muddy waters rush in early spring thaw, or clean with snow caked on ice in a low glare of winter. I was sorry to be home with chickenpox the day she saw something new. Two men hacking at thick ice, and stopped to ask what they were doing. The friendly one paused to explain that breaking ice would prevent damming of waters and flooded streets. Then he asked her name, and she asked his. And at home that afternoon, still excited, she told the story to her mother, who relayed in a matter-of-fact Irish way what was just reported on the radio. The man who had asked her name and told her his was swept away in a sudden surge of water and had not yet been found. He never was found. I do not miss the memory that could appear in my winter dreams, his smile and asking my name.
3 minutes.
Well, I will do a poem from the first book, The Dead Spirits of the Piano, about Liszt, who was also one of my favorite composers for the piano, and is really too difficult to play for me, but I try anyway. And we're going to hear Liszt on Saturday evening if you're here for that. With Liszt at the piano. So easily am I seduced by your songs of consolation, your numbered dreams of love. Then just when I think I can play you as you intended, with even triplets, the right measure of passion, you complicate the rhythm. 4 notes in one hand against 3 in the other. Demand long leads in my left hand, or change keys suddenly. 5 flat to 4 sharp, accidental tossed in for dissonance before resolution. You must have been that kind of lover, demanding, hard to interpret, shifting moods as often as key signatures. And when a woman left, what would you do? Rhapsodize in a minor key, compose a love theme in broken chords, rush the tempo while waiting for her to return, as you knew she would. As I will, because I can't stay for long. Chopin makes me weak, but practicing you, I fall in love again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol, for those musical poems about music and the world. And there were 2 duties on this, so perhaps one of them is the one you want. Just a few words about the special events that the Friends of the Chicago Writers Center sponsors. Since it is getting later in the season, many of them have passed, but I'll remind you of what you missed and maybe what you can catch next season. We usually start the year with a reception for friends, right here on the porch, light free refreshments for people interested in the literary arts. We also sponsor a book fair, usually the 2nd or 3rd Sunday of the season on Vesper Plaza from 12 to 2, what we call the Authors Among Us book fair that you can apply for if you have a published book. Just Monday, we have the Favorite Poem Project established by Robert Pinsky, which when he was actually here at the Chautauqua, and it was also established throughout the country during his tenure as poet laureate. That's an opportunity for Chautauquans to read some of their favorite poems and briefly explain why they liked the poem so much. The Literary Arts Contest just closed on Sunday. We will announce the winners and have an award ceremony on Sunday, August 13th at 2:30 in the Hall of Philosophy. So that's the one remaining special event. You can revisit some events. The Favorite Poem Project is on our YouTube channel, Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center channel. This reading and other readings from the Office Hours series is on YouTube. So I hope you'll consider joining the Friends and help to sponsor such events. I do want to put in a plug for our sister arts, the theater. 2, one, Kate Hamill, who adapted Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice for the stage, will be speaking today at 3:30 in the Hall of Philosophy. Unfortunately, the run of Pride and Prejudice is over. Too bad, you missed it. But Tiny Father, their next production, begins previews on Friday, so do catch it if you can. Let's now turn our attention back to poetry and Pat Owen, who went from the left brain world of legal publishing to the right brain world of poetry. Her work has appeared in Gulfstream Literary Magazine, Louisville Review, Highland Park Poetry, and several anthologies. She was a finalist in the Atlantic Review International Poetry Competition and was an award winner in the Chautauqua Writers Center 2020 Literary Arts Contest. The online Sheila Nagig published her poem Hawk in its summer 2021 edition. Her debut poetry collection, Crossing the Sky Bridge, was published by Larkspur Press in 2016. Her second collection, Orion's Belt at the End of the Drive, was published by Accent Publishing 2019, and her third book, Bardo of the Coming, from Accent Publishing, was released in 2022. Pat Owen.
So honored to be here. I've taken many classes up on the third floor and so happy to be and grateful to be part of this wonderful literary tradition, and happy to see so many friends here, poets and friends from Louisville and friends from Sarasota. So I'm one lucky girl today. First, I want to read to you from Orion's Belt at the End of the Drive. Usually I preference my remarks to a regular group by saying, I know many of you had an unfortunate experience with poetry in high school, and you think poetry is very scary and you're not going to understand it. And so I give a money back guarantee that you'll get a full refund if you don't understand anything. But I don't think that's necessary with this group, because I suspect you've been exposed to poetry since high school. So I'm going to be doing my literary reading today. The first poem I'll read is the title poem, Orion's Belt at the End of the Drive. And what this tries to do is what I try to do in most of my poetry, is talk about ordinary life and the juxtaposition with the transcendent layered on the ordinary events. Orion's Belt at the End of the Drive. So many years I went out to get the paper, early in the dark, breathing in the night sky, my one brief contemplation of infinity for the day. And if there was a full moon, I would open my arms to it and bow, aligning myself, my place in the universe by the stars. This poem is called Against the Backdrop, and it was written after an experience at the Cineplex in Sarasota. And it's another ordinary event overlaid with what's more permanent. It's called Against the Backdrop. On a hard bench in the Cineplex lobby, brightly lit, cavernous, two women alone in the holiday crowd. One weeping as though her world is lost. The other holding, comforting her. It was years ago, but still I can't forget the sight. Against a raucous backdrop of concession lines, mothers with kids, teenagers laughing. Why did this scene catch my eye? They could have been sisters, lovers, friends. Whatever pain was endured, it must have been eased by this tenderness. Now, every time I comfort or am comforted, that image reappears. Is it worth the pain to be held in this constellation? Ordinarily, poetry critiques, in my experience, where you meet with a group of poets and share your work and get criticism and feedback, in my experience, they've almost always been gentle and affirming,
but once in a while, something else happens. And this is an account of that. Now, I am not either party that is discussed here. I am merely an observer. But this is a true story. It's called The Poetry Critique. The poet shrinks under the attack. His body curls into withdrawal, shoulders folded over vulnerable belly. His torso embodies pain. Scooting lower in his seat, he tries to disappear. And still the attacks rain down. The assailant ranting on without looking at his victim, holding forth in his sureness, oblivious to the wounds. The lion is unaware of the suffering of the gazelle. This poem is called Ink. Writers are frequently very particular about their writing instruments. And sometimes these writing instruments of choice have detrimental side effects. This poem is called Ink. I'm funny about my pens. I used to write only with a real fountain pen until they became a nuisance with their incessant leaks. Now I use only a roller ball, preferably with a micro point, but fine will do in a pinch. What I absolutely won't use, the lowly ballpoint. I can't tell you the times I've had a pen leak all over my hands, writing a check in church. Or I remember Ellen at MD Anderson, desperate to get ink stains off her fingers, on her way to treatment, needing to feel worthy of being healed. The last poem in the book is a prototype. If you want to go home, you can write the same poem yourself. All you have to do is go home and look around you and then make a list of what you see. You can have your own private poem. It's called After My Untimely Death. Sometimes as I leave the house, I foresee people coming in and finding remains of my life spread out like the ruins of Pompeii. For sure on the floor, my Birkenstock, well worn and embedded with my DNA. Journals, books, and magazines stacked by my chair. Yesterday's running shoes beneath the table, shoestrings dangling, toothbrush standing at attention, maybe the towel still damp, a coffee cup with the final dregs, today's New York Times spread out, half read. Did I leave a light still burning, awaiting my return? The chairs around the table askew, a life in process. My fuzzy wrap blanket still on the footstool, housing my fluffed off cells, hiding out in the folds of the yarn. Fingerprints on the sliding door belong to this particular life. Thoughts and dreams religiously recorded, black ink in journal after journal, stacks of them. Shelves of books underlined and notated, my sweat smudged on each page. Light streams in through the blinds as usual. Funny, all the years of viewing Orion's belt, I thought my place on Earth was permanent. The next poems are from my most recent book, Bardo Becoming. Everybody always says, what's Bardo? Bardo is a Tibetan Buddhist term meaning the period of time between death and rebirth. And it can also mean just any period of time of transition, which we are always in. The first poem in the book is called Music. It's about my father that took me a lifetime to appreciate. When I was younger, I knew what was wrong, but I couldn't quite figure out what was right. But now I know. Maybe you've had a similar experience. Music. It's what my frill-free childhood needed like oxygen. And it's what my father tried to provide. For breakfast, marching music on the radio. He was always whistling under his breath. An upright piano in the living room, and to tempt me with more lessons, musicians appeared in our home with trumpets displayed in a felt case, an accordion we could try out. And then there was the clarinet we borrowed from the school band. All these luxuries his farm childhood couldn't afford. And now for us, the best. All stabs at nudging us out of the gray mundane and into the exalted above. And even now, hearing chords of piano music, an ancient pang of guilt that I didn't fulfill his dream. I wish I could be for him a marching band, tubas slapping in sunlight, the rat-a-tat-tat of drums. This poem is called The Amaryllis. It has to do with remembrance and how we carry on. The Amaryllis. Last year, a fuzzy blanket. This year, an amaryllis. Gift to encourage my girls through the gray. So you can watch for spring, my heart says. The seed for all this. The solace I took in watching the amaryllis unfold in the kitchen as Ellen lay dying in the living room. Checking each day for what color would emerge. Finally, one morning, a shocking pink, fresh as a new day. And now, years later, finding the hyacinth burst into blossom overnight, pink and hopeful on my breakfast table. Do any of you still have a physical card address book that you keep addresses in? And how do you feel when you look back through it? That's what this poem's about. It's called The Address Book. It's traveled so many miles, threadbare corners, alphabetical tabs frayed and curling, water stains on the stitched burgundy front, post-it notes on the inside cover, contact info for Jane, now in assisted living, instructions for getting messages from my old landline, entry code for the building, appliance repair references, always trying to help my future self. Lines crossed out with new addresses, couples no longer together, an astrologer, my favorite florist, the poet whose husband tragically died, my neighbor 2 moves ago, a couple from the movie class, therapist of an old girlfriend. Do you wince at the sight of estranged friends? Do you scratch out the names of people now dead? A catalog of markings in careful blue ink, petroglyphs even now fading. Do any of you have pictures of your ancestors all lined up in black and white, stuck away in your attic somewhere, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, people you're not quite sure who they are? This poem is called Photo of Ancestors, 1901. They're all dressed up for this picture-taking day. Mother and father and 5 kids plus Rosa, the orphan girl, holding a small bouquet. Taffeta dresses and bow ties and suits, a tribe lined up, to be immortalized. The boy's hair neatly combed, mother and baby adorned with necklaces. Care went into this. I'm drawn to the hands in the photo, hers stretched across the baby, fingers spread wide, protective, the middle son standing, touching the shoulder of each parent, and the father's wide knuckles folded in his lap, confident, in charge. From this black and white world, they gazed out. Their lives as real to them as ours are to us. No DNA test in those days, but one would show a direct line to me. So I study their features as though looking for a lost continent. Like a migrating bird searching for home, I'm seeking a familiar face. She drapes her arm casually through his in ownership connection. He's assured at ease. She's steely-eyed. No one's getting anything from her. He has a soft tenderness around his lips, could easily break into a smile. The oldest boy wears knickers, hands lie softly in his lap. The second son stares into the camera with a skeptical look. Well, we'll see about this. A younger voice, sweet-faced and shy, looks directly into the camera, but can't foresee 5 years later his death by drowning in a swollen river. I've never read this poem to a group before, but I think you're going to get it. Just shift gears. The other poems have been representational, like you're looking at a painting that's representational of the world. And all of a sudden, in the next painting, you're going to be looking at an impressionistic painting. That's the kind of shift I'm doing here, but I think you'll follow it, since this is a literary group. And the Lord said, let there be thick fog with herons drifting through. And let there be soft mounds of grass with white ibis grazing. And the Lord said, let there be soft dampness as far as the eye can see. And let there be she, soft in her skin, gazing into the fog, soft as morning. And let there be she who has lain naked all night in bed, aware of movement, bare skin against crisp feet. And let there be she aware of her mind, that she is here rather than nowhere. And let her wonder whether that's even possible. And let there be she who rises from her chair to begin her plan for the day. And let there be a body to rest in as she sits aging in place, noting what enters her eyes, her mind. And the last poem book, it's called Hawks, and it's about my daughter, my younger daughter. And it's about what do we owe those we love. And what do we owe ourselves? Hawks. My daughter thinks hawks are loved ones come back to protect her. And who knows? Maybe someday I'll be soaring high above the tall trees looking down. But today we're walking together in the park, and as we pass the glistening magnolia and holly trees, I do not say, that's what I wanted to plant for the twins, until the idea was vetoed as too messy. And I feel good about holding back, not treading on hurtful ground, practicing for next time and for the time after that, until I grow closer to the goodness I can only imagine. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat, for those acutely observant poems. I do wonder though what it means that my preferred pens are wasteful. We do have time for a few questions. If anyone has questions for either of our poets, we do have a few minutes here. Any questions from the gathered literary multitude?
I'm going to ask each of them. Have you always written poetry, and if not, when did you start?
So the question is, have you always written poetry, and when did you start, whether it was the first thing or the second or the third?
Started about 20 years ago, and now
The microphone, so forth.
all I've done before is be in love with words and be a big reader and journal, but didn't start writing poetry until about 20 years ago.
Well, I've been at it longer than I care to think about. I did a little in high school, but then I like seriously started writing. I took a workshop at NYU when I was about 25 or 26, and my life was falling apart. And I decided I've got to do something different. And I opened the NYU Continuing Ed catalog and saw a poetry workshop and thought, I can do that. And that was the start. It was hard to find the time when I was being a lawyer full time, but retirement is great.
We have another question here. Yes.
And this is for each of you. When you're stuck in the middle writing a particular poem, what do you do to get unstuck?
So the question is, when you're stuck in the middle of a poem, what do you do to get unstuck?
I'd say just give it some time, go away, and sometimes the answers come in the shower or sleeping in a dream, and just give it some time, and if it's meant to be, it'll happen.
Well, sometimes I go play the piano, and that can help. Or play stupid word games like Wordle and Foil. But sometimes it's good just put it away, not look at it for some length of time. I mean, I have poems I haven't looked at in years, and I take them out and think, oh, this is not bad. I can do something with it. So there are a lot of ways to deal with it. The shower is good. You know, lines can come to you when you can't write them down.
One final question in the back there. Just in case you couldn't hear, it's been asked what poets from the past have influenced your work and what present poets do you admire?
I'm in love with Ada Limon, and I discovered her before she became poet laureate of the U.S. In fact, I kept telling people in my writers group, I kept raving about Ada Limon to the point that everybody is like, "Shut up, I don't want to hear this anymore." Then she's named poet laureate, and I'm like, "See, it's not just me." I also really like Ellen Bass and Marie Howe and many others.
Well, going back to the 60s and 70s, I started with Robert Lowell, Sylvia Plath, Anne Sexton, Erica John, and then Stanley Kunitz, and recently, well, Seamus Heaney. Well, there are others. They keep dying, unfortunately.
Well, thank you. Two of my favorite poets are Carol Jennings and Pat Owen. Let's give them another round of applause. Now, two announcements. I already mentioned Kate Hamill at 3:30, but in the surprise, I wasn't expecting that the poet of next week, Phil Metras, is actually speaking at 2 o'clock in the Hall of Philosophy. Then he'll be speaking again at 3:30, along with the prose writer David Gipples, as writers of the week. I highly recommend Phil. I took a Zoom workshop from him in 2020, the year of Zoom workshops. From that, a poetry group arose that I'm still part of, and I'll be in his workshop next week. Just a reminder that there are books for sale and signing, and please come by next week for the Authors Hour. We have poet Alyssa Samarco reading from Beyond the Dawn, and we have an interesting combination. Joanne Spence is a poet and yoga instructor. One of her books that she'll be reading from is 47 Practices to Calm Balance. And I'm not sure if that's a yoga or a poetry book or perhaps both. Thank you for joining us today. I hope to see you next week. Take care. Bye. I bet again.
I wouldn't love it. Sure. The first one. Thank you.